In 2022, I watched 125 films that I hadn't seen before. 60 of them were released that year. There were plenty of new releases I didn't even get round to watching that are still on my list whenever I get a chance. Last year, some of you were confused about release dates for my chosen films. So, to be clear, I'm going off mainstream release dates for these films in the UK. Sometimes films are advertised as released in 2021 because they aired in the US or at a film festival first. I gotta say, I was surprised by the quality of some of the films on this list. I expected way less from a couple, and instead they turned out to be some of my favourite films of the year. I was dragged along by friends or by unexpectedly positive word of mouth, and was blown away by how Hollywood isn't just doing the same old all the time. Well, sometimes. We still need to kick this off by covering the worst of the year. The worst. Any discussion on spoilers for the movies will be time-stamped, so you can skip spoiler talk if you want. However, the films on my worst list are so terrible that I strongly recommend ignoring any spoiler warnings. These films are not worth your time to watch, and I'm giving you my time to warn you why. Number 5. Morbius. Starring Jared Leto as Dr. Morbius, an occasional rock star who sends work colleagues dead animals and preaches to a cult of young girls on his private island. Wait, sorry, wrong bio. The real plot of this movie is biochemist Michael Morbius tries to cure himself of a rare blood disease, but inadvertently infects himself with a form of vampirism instead. His adopted brother also has this rare disease, but when he steals and takes the cure, he uses it to become a villain, so Morbius has someone to fight in the finale. Joining Black Adam as an overhyped, underwhelming new superhero flick that promises to kick off exciting team-ups and franchises, Morbius crashed. Hard. And it was worse than Black Adam because at least Black Adam had some good characters and story. There are 2 things I liked about this film. Matt Smith dancing. Yep, this dumb moment works for me because it's just a silly, smug dude having some fun and thinking he's super sexy for it. Matt Smith sells it. The movie decides not to take itself seriously for a minute, and that works. The facial design for Vampire Morbius wasn't awful. I would even say it's good enough. On the flip side, there are a ridiculous amount of things wrong with this movie. Most notably, its terrible, illogical writing. Spoilers from here, but I really don't recommend bothering with this movie. A big problem is Jared Leto as the lead. He has no chemistry with anyone. His character is boring and soulless, just like the uninspired and trope-filled movie he's in. I really didn't care for him as a hero or villain because he was just so bland. Matt Smith would have been a way better lead because at least he brings some fun energy and charisma to his character, despite how badly written that character also is. By the way, I refuse to use character names because they are just so poorly fleshed out that they're barely characters. The actors may as well be badly improving the script for all the good it does. The movie was really unclear on the relationship between the Morbius family. I didn't realise Jared Harris was meant to be Jared Leto and Matt Smith's adoptive father until I read it online after the movie. I just thought he was their doctor for life since they're so sick. It's possible I may have just been too distracted by little Jared Leto's awful acting in the poorly edited flashback scenes. There really isn't much logic in the script. Matt Smith goes from wanting Leto to be on his side and working with him, to wanting to kill him the next second in the same scene.
Everything I am because of you. I looked up to you my whole life. I will never leave you. And I will not go back. You cannot make me go back. I won't let you make me go back.
What exactly does he want? Also, how did he manage to successfully inject this secret serum into his own spine without assistance when Jared Leto barely managed it with his love interest colleague? You want to know what really made me hate this movie though? Other than the lazy, undeserved attempt to have Vulture want to start the Sinister Six with Morb.
Who the hell are you, man?
Me? I am Venom.
This ham-fisted reference makes no sense. Venom is not a public figure. This saying is not famous in universe. They are on the opposite f***ing sides of America. How dare you try to steal clout from a slightly better Sony Marvel supervillain movie? Number 4. Men. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because I had high hopes for this movie, and instead I almost walked out of the cinema about halfway through. Men is the story of a woman on a solo holiday to the English countryside after the death of her ex-husband. She's dealing with the emotional trauma of his death while encountering the weird male inhabitants of the town. I would not be surprised if the director, Alex Garland, comes out in 10 years and reveals that this movie was an elaborate joke in seeing how weird he can go, and how much the audience will interpret from it. If so, I will raise a glass to him. Garland's previous films were the brilliant Ex Machina and Annihilation, 2 films that beautifully mix themes of humanity, personhood, science fiction, and other big ideas. I really liked these films, and spent days after thinking about them and the impact they had on me. Although these films were artsy and multi-layered, the themes and goals felt intentional and deep. I didn't get that feeling from Men. Instead, it felt like a mash of ideas that really didn't work. Did the writers know what they wanted to say or do? Confusingly, it's still a well-made film. Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear are fantastic in their performances, especially Kinnear playing multiple roles. The shots of the English countryside are beautiful and look like paintings on film. And the sound design is great, as demonstrated by a scene of Buckley echoing her voice down a tunnel, even if that scene ended up being overly long and pretty pointless. Okay, spoiler time, but again, does it even matter? The most common interpretation of this film is that it is about intergenerational trauma and toxic masculinity, examining those toxic ideals about gender roles and expectations throughout generations, and then looking at its impact on women and even men themselves. But honestly, I just don't think that theme or message is executed well at all. The moments that support this theme are on the nose, and the rest just feel messy and for shock value. Especially that third act, which was again just overly long and gratuitous and ridiculous, and I hated it. It's 20 minutes of Rory Kinnear vomiting and birthing warped versions of himself over and over. I'm not kidding. Maybe it has to be seen to be believed, but I wouldn't bother, as that's the only slightly interesting thing about this film. Even Jessie Buckley gets bored and sits down by the end of the scene because it's just relentless and never ending. Look, I'm sure I will have some viewers lunge for my throat for not understanding this movie and tell me all the ways I am basically Logan Paul watching Nope right now. And that's fine. It just did not work for me. If it worked for you, great. I'm always up for discussion or to change my mind, so please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested in hearing your perspective. Number 3. The Bubble. Judd Apatow got really bored during lockdown and decided to create a film so superficial, vapid and unfunny because if COVID was going to waste his time, by golly, he will waste his audience's time too. So he made a film about what he allegedly knows best, making a film. And it's topical because it's based during a real-life global pandemic. The plot really is that flimsy. A group of actors and actresses are stuck inside a pandemic bubble at a hotel while they attempt to film a movie. A pretty bad movie inside this very bad movie. The plot is boring, the characters are one-dimensional, and the comedy is non-existent. I thought comedies were meant to be funny, but Judd Apatow sets out to prove me wrong. All of the characters are so unlikable. I don't care about their supposed suffering in quarantine. I think we're meant to find their predicament funny because normally actors get a lot of money and are treated very well by the movie industry, but in this movie, they're not. But the film just ends up being a slog to get through and an unwelcome reminder of what we went through during the pandemic, but without the money and privilege these actors got. Until Gal Gadot pops in to remind us, that is. Here are some spoilers, but really they just prove how unoriginal and lazy this film is. However, there are actually some spoilers about the movie Tropic Thunder coming, so skip to this timestamp to avoid that. The Bubble copies Tropic Thunder's ending, which was a much better film about actors trying to make a film but everything goes wrong. The Bubble ends with a time jump to promote the documentary about this crazy film shoot. The more I think about the complete lack of effort that went into this film, the more I just think this was Judd Apatow looking to get an easy paycheck for his friends and family after COVID. Seriously, all this could have been forgiven if the movie was funny. But it's not. It is not a funny movie. I cannot emphasize enough how boring, long, and unfunny this movie is. I will begrudgingly give it one good note. Just like with Wonder Woman 1984, Pedro Pascal manages to elevate a very bad movie with his performance. His character is still one-dimensional and bad, but Pascal's talent is somehow able to overcome it and make his scenes bearable. And even, dare I say, charming. Number 2. Blonde.
I truly believe that she was very close to us. She was with us. I think she was happy. She would also throw things off the wall sometimes and get mad if she didn't like something. Maybe this sounds very mystical, but it is true.
Oh, Anna. This movie was not the film sold to audiences by its cast and crew. This was touted to be a moving biopic on Marilyn Monroe, because we don't already have enough films focused on her life. And Ana de Armas's shot at awards gold. It had a pretty good cast, a compelling subject matter, and lots of marketing hype in the lead up to its Netflix release. In the theme of Blonde's one-word title, here is my one-word summary. Exploitative. As hinted from all the other films about this famous starlet's life and the sex appeal that follows her even after death, Marilyn Monroe and her story are no strangers to exploitation. But that's not why this film is so upsettingly over the top in its exploitation. In this movie, Marilyn Monroe is reduced to a childish, whimpering sexual fantasy.
Am I your good girl, Daddy?
Yeah, you're my good girl, darling.
She is not a person. Her life is depicted as one horrible tragedy after another, with plenty of sex, both consensual and not, mixed in there, all with the inexplicable intention of promoting this as art. I'm aware the film is not trying to be factual, nor act as an autobiography, but its interpretation of Marilyn as a person or story is just disgusting. There are so many disturbing and upsetting scenes that are blended with real events from Marilyn's life to ensure the audience is not actually certain what is meant to be fact or fiction. I'll briefly go over them, so with that, it's time for spoilers. Also, trigger warnings. For basically everything. So feel free to skip this section, it's pretty gross. The film starts by going over how mentally disturbed Marilyn's mother was, resulting in her trying to drown Marilyn. Then, Marilyn is abandoned at an orphanage while her mother is institutionalized. Becoming a famous model is glossed over because we need to get on to more trauma. She is assaulted. She enters a polyamorous relationship that results in a forced abortion, which traumatizes her for the rest of her life. And one of them catfishes her as her dad also for the rest of her life, resulting in her intentional death at the end of the film. But wait, there's more. She's assaulted a few more times, becomes addicted to pills, and has visions of her unborn babies pleading with her because we need some propaganda sprinkled in too.
You won't hurt me this time, will you? Not do what you did the last time?
I didn't. I didn't mean to.
Yes, you meant to. It was your decision.
It's a misery flick pretending to be something deeper. There are shots of jeering men meshed with sexy shots of Marilyn posing, making sure the film creates enough gripping titillation for the audience while trying to condemn just that. It's my problem with Pam and Tommy all over again. In making a film about the exploitation and terrible way someone was treated by the world, the filmmakers have successfully exploited them all over again. I do think Ana de Armas and the rest of the cast and crew thought they might be creating something special here. Inexplicably, the film is actually well made. The cinematography, makeup, costumes and acting are great. Anna is great too, even if she is playing a very warped, infantile version of a real person. I cannot disavow this movie enough. Especially because it decides to take a big dump on the memory of a very real young woman who died far too young. Number 1. 365 days. This day. And the next 365 days. No one had high expectations for the 365 Days series. No one. And yet I watched it. And my expectations found a bar so low I tripped over it multiple times while watching this series. I fell flat on my face and I deserved it. Using the word film to describe either of these things feels wrong on so many levels. Instead, it is far more apt to refer to these as long-form music videos, with plenty of nudity to try and reel in its audience. By combining these two long-form music videos together, maybe there's an argument in finding a film in there? So I've decided to give them both the top spot for worst film of 2022, because they are both absolutely appalling wastes of time. Anyway, here's spoilers. These two things are the sequels to 365 Days, which somehow had 10 times as much plot as its follow-ups. In the first one, a rich mob boss kidnaps a woman and gives her a year to fall in love with him. Fortunately, it takes her like 2 weeks, and then they get engaged and she's pregnant, but the film ends with a possible assassination attempt on her life. Cliffhanger! There's also a lot of BDSM sex scenes. That's kinda the series thing. The first sequel, 365 Days, This Day, starts with the reveal that Lara survived the attempt, but lost her baby, which is never explained by the way. And with that, the plot basically ends. There's a weak attempt at drama when Mob Boss's secret evil twin brother breaks up the main couple and she immediately falls in love with a new mob boss. Then evil ex-girlfriend shoots Lara and 365 Days This Day ends. The next 365 days is even worse. The entire film is Lara thinking about the other mob boss. It's all leading up to whether she will choose original mob boss or new one. And guess what? It ends on another cliffhanger. A cliffhanger of who she chooses.
Are you back, baby girl?
The filmmakers do their best to drag things out as long as possible. I will say one scene got a big laugh out of me by demonstrating just how hard the filmmakers are trying to pad the runtime. At one point, Lara fantasizes about sleeping with each of the guys. Then both of them. Then them with each other? Ugh. None of these scenes are even slightly exciting or arousing. The actors are attractive, but the scene direction and lack of any passion, both from the characters and within the filmmaking, just takes away any chance of titillation. I mean, this is insulting. How have these received a mainstream release? A budget? A freaking franchise? Like, we know these movies are just meant to be softcore porn, but Netflix decided to host them. And yes, it has not escaped my notice that the top 3 movies on my worst list were released by Netflix. Falling for Christmas just narrowly avoided making this list, but it made me unintentionally laugh enough to be an okay time. These are not films. These are things. Wastes. Ugh. The best. A change from last year. No spoilers will be discussed for any of these picks because I want you to go check them out. These are your recommendations for films you may have missed in 2022. Number 5. Top Gun Maverick. I'm not a fan of Tom Cruise. I really didn't want to support his films, but somewhat positive reviews of this one made me suck it up and go see it. It's easy to view a Top Gun sequel over 30 years later as a nostalgic cash grab because that's what most of these sequels try to do. However, the creators of Top Gun Maverick really felt a passion that they put into every aspect of this film. I saw the original about 6 months before watching the sequel, and it really felt true to the atmosphere and characters set up in the original. In fact, I would say Top Gun Maverick is better than the original. But it doesn't try to be. It really respects where it came from. This film has Tom Cruise's titular Maverick back as a top naval aviator. He is reunited with his deceased best friend's son and has to deal with the trauma of his past while instructing a new team of Top Gun recruits to fly an incredibly dangerous mission. This film just hit all the right notes. It was fun, exciting, intense, had some fantastic emotional points, great soundtrack, great acting and story, great cinematography and flight action choreography. I think creating a film that pushes a manly military-focused agenda that also allows its characters and audience members to get emotional is actually pretty commendable. The seriousness of the Top Gun recruits' work is not ignored, nor the very real danger within it. Maverick's best friend's death is a reminder of that. Characters that you care about are put into tense and dangerous situations, but they aren't just cannon fodder for shot kills in this military movie. Instead, the point is to care about what happens to them, and it gets emotional quickly when you do care. My only complaint comes from having to look at Miles Teller's very silly, out-of-place mustache all film, which was an effort to make him look more like his on-screen father. Damn, that was distracting. Now, what does it mean for military propaganda to do so well at the cinema? Number 4. Avatar: The Way of Water. Avatar: The Way of Water reintroduces Jake and Neytiri with a family of their own, as the humans from the first film return to once again try to take over Pandora and its many wondrous resources. Jake and his family are forced to go on the run to a completely foreign area of Pandora and are being hunted down by old enemies seeking revenge. First things first, the characters are brilliant. Yeah, the film is over 3 hours long, but I felt that screen time was used well to really flesh out and explore the characters and the expanded world of Pandora. The focus is now moved from Jake and Neytiri to their children, because the children will presumably be the future of the franchise. Also, we did spend a whole movie with the two of them already, so they had their moment. The story was better than expected, but I think that's owed to keeping it quite simple. This works in not distracting too much from the characters and their journeys in the film. It basically follows the Sully family trying to adapt to this new way of water and learning more about themselves and Pandora in the process. A process that is actually genuinely interesting because the world building is just so fantastic. The film is definitely more of a character study than an outright action-adventure film, with Pandora also being a character that's explored. Appropriately, it's a bit of a coming-of-age story for the children, because they are forced to face all these new challenges. There are a lot of unanswered questions by the end of the movie, but I think that's definitely purposeful to set up the sequels. Now, normally I'd be very skeptical about sequel bait, but James Cameron has always made it expressly clear he wants to make up to 5 Avatar films. This means the film can take its time in telling its story, because there will be time later for answers, and there's no rush to info dump on the audience. Obviously, if the sequels don't end up happening, then I'll probably feel very different about all these loose ends. It goes without saying because you've probably already seen the buzz, but yeah, the film is gorgeous. The decision to have the main characters mostly be CG meant that they blend seamlessly with the CG world, and that makes the entire viewing experience really immersive. I was really impressed by their use of colour, as a lot of similar shades are used, especially in the water, but they still managed to make characters and pieces of the world stand out. I can't wait for the sequel. Number 3. Speak No Evil. I made a 20-minute video on all the layers and themes within this film and how fantastically it was delivered. How brilliantly the characters were portrayed and how complex and interesting the story is. I just had to talk about everything beautifully delivered within this film. And then YouTube gave me a copyright strike and made me take it down. So if this section ends up looking visually deep-fried, YouTube's copyright system has reared its head again. Maybe one day I'll get that video on YouTube, but until then, I'll keep this brief and spoiler-free. Speak No Evil follows a Danish family visiting a Dutch family they met on holiday. What was supposed to be an idyllic weekend slowly starts unravelling as the Danes try to stay polite in the face of unpleasantness. This is a great piece of social commentary on how much someone will accept in order to avoid confrontation. It really made me think about the bystander effect and how, by avoiding conflict and confrontation, we are just contributing to the problem by not speaking up. This film goes further than that, and it is in the genre of horror, but for the most part, it's a really captivating, well-written and acted drama. The horror elements only really come into play in the final act, and that's to really push its message home. The main characters are 2 seemingly typical families, and therefore feel relatable. It's easy to excuse some of their initial actions and responses because the setting is also really normal and lifelike. The film does a great job quietly sowing the seeds of doubt and anxiety in the audience and its characters, until it builds and builds to a shocking finale. It's incredibly gripping. But I'll say no more. Go watch it. Number 2. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. So this is a multiverse film. Marvel, take notes. Everything Everywhere All at Once follows Evelyn, who gets unwillingly pulled into an epic adventure where she must connect different versions of herself in the parallel universe to stop a great evil. She just wants to file her taxes and get on with life, but the multiverse needs her help, and its greatest foe is already hunting Evelyn down. This film touches on the types of questions and themes that I want from a film tackling the multiverse. It's an enormous concept and a huge task for the filmmakers. The idea of a multiverse suggests there are unlimited parallel universes out there, all different in the smallest ways, existing at the same time as our lives. Everything Everywhere All at Once takes this idea, and it touches on more than just the simple idea of another you out there living a better life. It gets down to the root of what makes a person, the patterns that make us who we are, how tiny decisions affect things, how it's easy to succumb to nihilism and anger when nothing really seems to matter, and carefully, slowly demonstrates how you can still make what you have worth it. It's a beautiful, very weird and wonderful film. This film made me laugh out loud and burst into tears in the same 10 seconds. There's a particular multiverse, including a raccoon, that I just loved because it was perfectly ridiculous and also somehow kinda heartbreaking. The wackiness works. I'm familiar with the Daniels' previous films, such as Interesting Ball, which you can watch on YouTube, it's only 10 minutes long. Really recommend. Which I think is almost like a precursor to this film because it prepares you for how they use such strange and funny stories to tell another story. They balance their weirdness well with the subject matter. I cried for most of the last half of the film. There are themes about family that really resonated with me, and I'm sure will do for a lot of people. But I really can't get into it without spoilers, and I do not want to spoil this film for you. Also, Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom came back for this movie to play Evelyn's husband, Waymond. His performance was amazing. How does someone give up acting for so long and then put on one of the best performances of the year? Special mentions. The Novice. I'm guessing Isabelle Fuhrman starred in that terrible Orphan sequel for the money, and I'm hoping she starred in The Novice for the passion. This film follows a college freshman undertaking an obsessive physical and psychological journey to make it to the top of her university rowing team, no matter the cost. Fuhrman is brilliant, and the film is so intense and so captivating, despite remaining firmly in its genre as drama, that it gave me a headache to watch because I was so into it. Maybe the headache is why it didn't make it into the top 5. Even so, it's a brilliant portrayal of obsession to the point of possible self-destruction that forces the audience to come along for the ride. The Northman. This Viking epic is actually based on the story that inspired Shakespeare's Hamlet, and follows Amleth on a quest to avenge his father and save his mother from his traitorous uncle. There are stunning vision sequences, which are direct and beautiful without being overly artsy or vague. The story was dripping in mythology without going overboard or stepping away from the reality of the brutal times Vikings lived in. It felt authentic in that sense. I just wish Anya Taylor-Joy's character had more agency or more to do in the film, because her talent is a bit wasted. Matilda the Musical. My ever-present proofreader and Frozen 2 criticism collaborator, Kelda, dragged me to this film and somehow I really enjoyed it. The film follows an incredibly bright young girl called Matilda, who is dealing with terrible parents and a terrible head teacher, while developing some strange powers. There's also singing and dancing. I think a big plus in making this film work is that there is so much passion from the cast and crew. Even the child actors are great, and perform some pretty intense dance and song sequences really well. I love that they don't hold back on the darkness of Roald Dahl's original tale, because that made Matilda as a character more complex, and the upbeat, corny moments of the story so much more rewarding. Unfortunately, the relationship between Miss Honey and Matilda wasn't developed enough, and I think if more time was spent on them outside of just progressing plot, this film could have easily been in my top 5. And now, my number 1 best film of 2022. Boiling Point. This film takes place over the course of one evening in an upmarket London restaurant, following its head chef and staff through an intense, busy, and ultimately life-changing hour and a half. Boiling Point is filmed in a single continuous take, seamlessly switching from character to character with fantastic acting and cinematography. I didn't even notice it was all being done in one take until I was halfway through because I was so gripped by the film. And then I was hugely impressed by how well it was done. It wasn't just a gimmick either. This one-take format results in an incredibly immersive story that pulls in the audience and forces them to feel alongside the characters during this high-pressure evening. It also means the film is moving in real time and therefore feels very fast-paced since its entire plot takes place within just 90 minutes. Oh, and I do have to add this fun fact because the film actually is a continuous shot. The entire film is one take. The director, Philip Barantini, and his team filmed the full 90 minutes 4 times over 2 evenings, and the third take is the final film. They wanted 8 takes, but COVID got in the way and it was deemed too risky, so they had even less chances for perfection. Every minute of screen time is well spent. We're following a character to tell their story, even if it's just for a moment, because each staff member at this restaurant is important and deserves to have their struggles and stress shown. It's fantastic in demonstrating how this collective stress keeps mounting until the explosive finale. It's boiling point. I think the authentic feel of the film really adds to the experience. I've been fascinated and somewhat appalled by the high-stress environment of the kitchen and hospitality industries for years. I could never deal with that stress on a daily basis, so I imagine a lot of passion is needed for the kitchen industry. Is that the right term? From what little I've seen or heard from restaurant kitchens, the intensity depicted seems to be genuine. While watching, there was one part of the film that stood out to me, wherein a visiting chef tries to mock the food he's being served by calling it simple, unpretentious. But the critic dining with him argues that that's what makes this work. And I feel that that is this film in a nutshell. It's not trying to sell you a layered narrative or blow you away, but instead presents these little snippets of people and their drive and desires through one night and lets you make your own conclusions from there. As for the characters, I love them all. For all their weaknesses, attitudes, and strengths, the characters felt so three-dimensional, and that is an incredible feat for an ensemble film. Everyone felt like a real person, just trying to make it through the night, through the next work shift, and live their lives. Watch this film. Please. It's fantastic. You will never take another chef or restaurant meal for granted again. So that was 2022. 60 films later, and I honestly did find more films mediocre than terrible or fantastic. Which I guess is okay. It was harder to pick a top 5 this year for sure. However, that does not take away the amazing quality of the top films for this year. I'm excited for what surprises 2023 brings. What was your favourite film? Or least favourite? Do you agree with my picks and reasons? Have you even heard of half these films? Let me know in the comments, as I'd love to hear what you think.